Hi everyone, so I'm coming to you today with a video to do with basically things that may have contributed to my weight loss. I did mention that I would be doing this video at some point during my anniversary of my weight loss week. So it was going to be a York vlog today, but we didn't end up going. So I've been in cleaning all day, trying to sort my little office makeup room out. So excuse the attire and the scraped back hair and the lack of makeup. But I'm just going to jump straight in and tell you a little bit of my story about how I may have got the way that I am, which brought me to start my weight loss journey. So I was born in 1973, so I am now 41 years old, coming up 42, and born a healthy child, no major issues throughout sort of my leading up to being 18. Around age 8 or 9, my weight did fluctuate strangely. There was a couple of years where I spent, I think it was 8, 9, 10, 11, where I kind of got quite chubby and then went back thin again. And then, and that did happen for 3 or 4 years. But then primarily sort of 12 onwards, my weight levelled out and I was a very slim young teenager and leading up to the late teens. So when I was on my 17th birthday, I found out that I was 6 weeks pregnant with my first child, which was Jade. So she was born December of 1990. I was 17 years old, and I wasn't really told anything about how to look after yourself when you were pregnant. All I remember hearing is people saying, "Oh, that's great, you can eat for two." So being a young naive teenager, I basically ate chocolate crisps and Chinese food. And my other favourite was big plates of mashed potato with about half a bottle of tomato sauce squeezed in and mixed around. And that was basically my diet for the whole of the 9 months. I found I was very tired on a morning and hardly woke up before lunch, but then I was awake up until the early hours of the following morning. So, and it is a pattern that has repeated itself throughout my life. That so when I was actually due to have Jade, I'd put on 5 stone in weight. I started out at around 8.5 stone when I fell pregnant with her and ended up being 13.5 stone. Unfortunately, only 2 stone of that weight came off up to about a year after she was born. There was a very embarrassing story actually of when I came to when I was supposed to be coming out of the hospital after being in there 10 days with her, because that was how long they kept you in back then. My mother-in-law brought some of my normal clothing up, and one of them being some cord ski pants that were a size 8, and I could only just get them past my knees. So there was a big hoo-ha of me being in the bathroom in the hospital, crying my eyes out, wondering what the heck was going on, what's happened. And of course she had to run off then and buy me new clothes, quite loose tracky bottoms, not very flattering, not very trendy as we used to call it back then. And that was really the beginning of the end for me of my struggle with my weight. So then in 1992, in August, Leo was born. With the pregnancy with Leo, I'd gained around 3 stone. So as I said, I was 8.5 before I had Jade, went up to 13.5, lost a couple of stones, so I was back down to 11.5. And then obviously through my pregnancy with Leo, I'd gone up to 14.5. But unfortunately, after having Leo, I only lost a stone in weight. So I was then sort of stuck at 13.5 stone. And that tended to be the weight that I was for a few years beyond. Let me think about this now. So I would have been 21 when I had Leo. And then at the age of 22, I had I don't really know what to call it, but and I don't really know how to discuss it, but I basically conceived another child, and there were problems with the I think what they call the viability of the child. When I went for the checkups, I think it was either 8 or 12 weeks. It was a long time ago now, and to be honest with this section of the story, the details are hazy because I did tend to block a lot of it out. I was still reasonably young at sort of 22, and I found it very traumatic. The baby, unfortunately, I had to be induced, and I had to give birth to the baby, and basically the pregnancy wasn't viable, and yeah, so I mean that wasn't very nice, and I did gain a little bit of weight with that pregnancy, and yeah, so that was when I was 22, and so obviously a little bit of weight was gained then, so I was probably back up to around 14 stone at that point. And then I met a friend who wanted me just to go along as company really to Slimming World, but I said, well, actually, you know, I need to do something about my weight myself, so how's about I come along with you? So that was basically my first jaunt to Slimming World, and I did lose 3 stone that first time on Slimming World, so I got down to 11 stone, which again was quite a lot heavier than I was right back at the beginning when I was a teenager, but for the age I was, and at 5'6", you know, I wasn't 100% happy with myself still, but I was comfortable, if you know what I mean. So following on from that, around 1996 is when John and I met, and you've all heard the story of how we met. I was basically with a couple of friends at Butlins in Skegness, and that is how we met. We moved in together around 9 months after from the date we met. John proposed to me on the 2nd of October 1998, and a date was set for the wedding for 2nd of October 1999. In March of 1999, I discovered that I was pregnant. We were really happy, elated. It was a perfect timing for us, and obviously, you know, although I would have been sort of 7 or 8 months pregnant in the church for the wedding, we didn't care, to be quite honest. We were just really happy. So we basically organised everything around the baby. We moved to a village. We wanted to move out of Bridlington because it had become, let's say, not as family friendly as it was when I was growing up, and Jade and Leo were quite small at the time, and we just wanted somewhere a little bit quieter and safer for them to live. So we moved through to Killam, and that was around July. We waited for the kids to break up from school, and we made the move in July. So hasten to say, moving house, it's quite a difficult time. They say it's one of the most of the 3 most stressful experiences of your life, along with I think it was getting married, and there's 3 things I can't remember, but obviously we were organising a wedding at the time, and then we were moving. Now at the time we couldn't, because we were saving for the wedding, we couldn't really afford like a removal company or something like that. So a lot of the heavy lifting and boxing up and moving to and fro was done by ourselves, which had gone absolutely fine. We were just bringing the last few boxes in, and unfortunately I started having really heavy stomach pains, and I had to lay on the floor because the bed hadn't been built at that point. I had to lay on the floor in the bedroom, and I was bleeding quite heavily, and I was in a lot of pain, and unfortunately, to cut a long story short with that, and John had to take me to our nearest hospital, and you go through scans and things like this, and internal examinations, and it's not a very pleasant experience. And basically I'd miscarried the baby at around 4 months, so that wasn't very pleasant at all. And well, I really don't really think I need to go into that too in depth. And we did spend the following, you know, quite a few years then trying to conceive. Sort of, I'll go back slightly as well, just to say that I've always had like really bad problems with my periods and stuff, right from starting my periods at age 12, so that's always been a big thing. And I've had like lots of different medications for that. I've been tried on the mini pill, the normal pill. I've had Mirena coils fitted that haven't helped. I've had the implants done over the years, the injections done over the years. So there's a lot of medical history with me around sort of women's reproductive bits and things. I'm not really the best vestibule for baby carrying, let's say, probably. So back on with where we were. So we just continued to try, and things weren't really happening, and it got to a point where we were worried as to why things weren't happening. And John went for tests. He had a normal sperm count, but the only thing they could see was that the sperm wasn't swimming in a direct line, it was swimming around in circles, but that certainly shouldn't stop us from getting pregnant. The doctor, I was examined, I had dye put through my tubes to check my tubes, everything was fine with that. And so as a last resort, the doctor said the only thing I can suggest you do is change your diet slightly and perhaps try and eat as healthily as possible, as healthily as your budget will allow. And Mrs. Dybel, he said, if you could possibly try and lose like maybe a few stone in weight, that would be great. It wouldn't hurt and it would help probably quite a bit. So back to Slimming World I trotted, and like an absolute miracle, like a charm, as soon as the weight came off, we got pregnant. So totally happy that we changed our lifestyle, changed our eating habits. The kids were a lot healthier for it because we'd stopped going down the sweetie aisle. So Jade and Leo were much, much healthier. We just skipped the sweetie and biscuit and chocolate aisle altogether and the crisp aisle. So from quite a young age, they have always eaten really healthy foods. Definitely always had fruit and vegetables in their lives. So it did us all the world of good, and we were just so happy that we were finally pregnant again. So that was, I'm trying to think what year that would have been. I think that would have been around 2004, that would have been. So it was a little later than I wanted to get pregnant, because I had a bit of a cut-off point of, if it hasn't happened by the time I'm 30, then we'll kind of call it a day. But as these things happen, you do kind of, when you least expect it, it happens. So pregnancy was going all fine. We had various scans and things, and I think I got on that pregnancy up to about 13 weeks, and I started having dreadful pain. And obviously, having a previous miscarriage, you do get worried. Obviously, I'd gone a little bit further in this pregnancy. Let me think about it. Had I gone further? No, I probably would have been around the same time. I miscarried our first child at about 4 months, and I was getting on for around 4 months, I think, when these pains started. So I was rushed into, because of my history, I was rushed into Hull Royal Infirmary, given various internal and external scans, internal examinations, and unfortunately it turned out that I had an ectopic pregnancy, which just means that the baby, rather than the baby growing inside your womb, it's actually been caught in one of your tubes, and obviously a baby can't grow to full term inside quite a narrow tube, and it can be actually life-threatening to the mother as well. So I was rushed in for an emergency operation, and I had my left-hand side fallopian tube and ovary taken away as a result of that ectopic pregnancy. So we were beginning to think that God was basically trying to tell us something at this point, and it was never meant to be. It was never meant to be for us. And, obviously, as all these things were going on, as the years were progressing, my body had just taken such a battering, and I think through depression and things from these things happening as well, weight had gradually gained back on. So that was, as I say, that was the second pregnancy. And then 2007, we found out we were expecting another baby, which was an absolute miracle, because obviously losing half of your reproductive system, we had actually totally given up by this point. We were told it was a very, very slim that I would get pregnant, and if I was to get pregnant, it would, the viability would be it would be a very slim chance. So we just bore that in mind, basically. We didn't obviously take precautions because I didn't honestly ever think that I would be able to get pregnant again after everything happening. And our little miracle Amelia was born in September 2007. It was, I have to say, absolutely horrendous pregnancy. Not because there was anything wrong with me, but and this is the point where I'm going to struggle. Basically, because I was just waiting for something to happen. Excuse me a minute. Sorry about that. I knew this would probably happen. But basically, yeah, the 9 months was very, very stressful because all I had in my head was something is going to happen. This baby is not going to come to us. Something is just going to go wrong, basically. That's how I spent the whole pregnancy, very stressed. I didn't put on anywhere near as much weight with Amelia, which John jokingly said at the beginning, "You'll get skinny with my baby." And I didn't. I put on 1 stone and 4 pound with Amelia, although I was carrying a lot of water. They thought she was going to be in excess of 12 pound when she was born. I also got gestational diabetes with her when I was pregnant with her, and my dreams of having a water birth at Castle Hill Hospital near Hull were sort of dashed when I found out I'd got gestational diabetes, because obviously I'm a high risk. So I had to go to Hull Royal, and they wanted me to not only go to Hull Royal, but they wanted me to go in earlier than my due date. So, with Jade and Leo, by the way, I'd had absolutely no problems. I didn't have any drugs, not even gas and air. Very short labours as soon as I went into labour. Jade, I went into labour by my waters breaking. She was born 3.5 hours later. And Leo, it was pain, and then the waters broke, and he was born after 1 hour and 50 with no drugs, no gas and air, just natural birth. So hence why they thought I would be more than capable of going to a Castle Hill hospital and having a completely natural birth in one of the water pooly, the birthing pools. So all those hopes were dashed, obviously, when I found out I had gestational diabetes, which again just made the anxiety even worse, that, oh my God, can anything ever go right? And so I did get sent into hospital early. They wanted to induce me, so only a month before she was due. And I was made to run up and down flights of stairs. I was given pessaries. I was given stretch and sweep things that they do, where they, I won't tell you what it is, but basically something called a stretch and sweep. I was given 3 of those. I was given pessaries inserted into my hoo-ha to bring on pregnancy. I was bouncing up and down on a birthing ball, and she just did not want to come. She's still very stubborn to this day. So in the end, they decided they would break my waters for me. And me being the kind person I am, agreed to let a medical student do this. After everything that I've been through, I thought, well, they've got to learn. I was explained what would happen. It would be what they call a controlled abruption. And it would be basically, they would cut a very small hole in the sack of water that Amelia was in, and then under their control, they would gradually let the water out. This having to be done because obviously, if you can imagine water gushing down a drain, it tends to pull all the gunk down with it. So what they didn't want to happen was for the water to gush out and bring Amelia's cord down with it, which of course is exactly what happened. So there was a term that they used there is a term for what this is called, but I can't remember what it was called. But basically, if you imagine water going down a plug hole, Amelia's cord was sucked out with it. As the cord came out, her head followed. So the cord was stuck between my pelvis and Amelia's, the top of Amelia's head there. So immediately, because the trainee was already sort of in there, he had to then, and I'm sorry if this is a bit gruesome to listen to, but because his hand was already inserted into my cervix, I think they call it, so I was 10 centimetres dilated. Obviously, I'd been given all the pessaries. He had to very, very quickly pop his hand and push Amelia's head away from the cord, because obviously she would have been starved of oxygen, and that could have resulted, it wouldn't have ended very well, let's say. So I had a sheet thrown over me. All this happened very, very quickly. So I had a sheet thrown over me and the doctor's arm. I was rushed in for an emergency cesarean. It was basically the changeover of 2 shifts, so I was very, very lucky in the fact that I had 2 teams of surgeons in the room and 2 teams of nurses in the room with me at the time. John had to throw a gown on, rush into surgery with me. They allowed him to do that. They didn't actually even have time to put what they would usually for a cesarean, put a sheet up just above your belly button so that you and your husband can't see what is going on sort of below the belly button. They didn't have time to do that. I was basically rolled onto my side, had a needle of around 9 to 12 inches, or at least it seemed like 9 to 12 inches. It was huge. I had a massive needle shoved into the bottom of my spine. I was screaming blue murder. It was horrendous. John came in as this was happening and wondered what the hell they were doing to me. They couldn't get the needle in the first 2 times. It was just absolutely, it was just the worst experience of my life. They eventually got the needle in. They eventually got the drugs into me. The bottom half of me was numb, and then immediately I was sliced open. John saw all of this. All I could see from looking at him and holding his hand to the side was his face turn completely green and him go, ooh, and look down to the ground like that, away from what was happening. Blood was all, just went everywhere. It was all over his new trainers. We remember that quite vividly. And literally within seconds, they said I would feel like a tugging sensation, which I did. And I felt a tug. And then the next thing I saw was Amelia just being more or less thrown onto my tummy. And it was amazing because the nurse had lifted because I was still fully clothed at this time because it was all so quick. Luckily I had like a top on. Quite a loose fitting top. The nurse pulled my top up very, very quickly, and Amelia literally crawled up my belly and found a way to my boob. The nurse helped me pull my bra back, and she was immediately latched onto my breast and was fed straight away. And that moment though, as they passed her to us and up my stomach, we both just looked at her in awe, looked at each other, and I just said, oh my God, John, look at her. And John, bless him, just burst into tears. It was so, gorgeous and amazing. So that is kind of the tummy muscle side of the weight loss and why I struggle so much with exercise and getting the tummy back flat again. So Amelia was breastfed. I breastfed Amelia for 15 months and the weight just dropped off me. I did lose quite a lot of weight after Amelia. Actually ended up losing more weight than I gained by being pregnant with her. So I was probably looking the healthiest I've looked in quite some time, having breastfed her. And as things do, once you stop with the breastfeeding and you're weaning them and things, I was grazing, I was nibbling, I was cooking tea and nibbling on things, I was eating Amelia's leftovers, and the weight did pile back on. Now, there came a point in my life where I was at a happy period, actually. I wasn't concerned about my weight, even though I was probably one of the heaviest weights I'd been in a long time. And something happened in my life. I lost my granddad. My granddad died of a double heart attack and a stroke. He had a heart attack, and then he had a stroke, and then he had a heart attack all in a row. It was basically just, it wasn't meant to happen. He was in hospital for routine tests. They'd asked him to stay in overnight with him being quite old, and unfortunately he's a bit of a stubborn man, and when the nurses didn't come to him as quickly as he would have liked to help him get to the toilet, he tried to get out of bed himself and fell out of bed, and that kind of triggered everything happening. So it was just a very unfortunate accident, and we were really sad to lose him. I haven't actually got a father. My granddad was, in my eyes, my father. So losing him was very, very difficult. It was a difficult time in my life. But because of the fact he had diabetes, and heart disease does run in our family, as does cancer, I just thought, I'm not helping myself here. I'm not helping myself at all. I really need to tackle this weight now. I really do. So that was why I then went on my next Slimming World journey. I do, it is the only one that works for me and the only one I find healthy. And I, had a massive weight loss this time round on Slimming World, and I got exactly to where I wanted to be. I'll insert some pictures for you to see, but this is where, fingers crossed, I hope it's not too late for me, but I really do hope I get back to here. After Amelia was around a year old, we decided, because I was an only child, and although Amelia has Jade and Leo, they're much, much older than her, and the age gap being as big as it was, I thought, if this is achievable, I'm not getting any younger, let's give her a brother or a sister, and then everything will be perfect. And I'm not going to go on and on about what happened with this, but basically we conceived straight away. It was absolutely fantastic. I couldn't believe it, because again, obviously, I'm still with half a reproductive system at this point. So she was, as I say, around a year old. Before she was even 18 months old, we were pregnant again. But unfortunately, even earlier this time, I was in very, very bad pain, rushed into Hull Royal Infirmary once again. And basically, as I was coming round from the anaesthetic, it was an ectopic again, by the way, obviously on the right-hand side. As I came round from the surgery, my surgeon said to me, you were extremely lucky that you got in as quick as you did. If we'd have left it almost 5 minutes later, your tube was about to, there's a technical word for it. Is it erupt? Let's say explode, because what would happen is if it gets to such a point, I can't exactly remember. Again, it's one of these things that you try and blank out because it's such a traumatic, horrendous experience. But basically, if it had been 5 minutes later, opening me up and operating, I could have been dead, basically. That's how bad it was. And I wish I'd have known how bad I looked and how traumatic, because that was all done very, very rushed as well. And I was very, very poorly for quite a while after that. As I was wheeled back into the ward and into my private room, Jade and Leo were sat waiting for me, not knowing obviously how horrendous I'd look, and I had tubes hanging out of me. I looked very, very white and pale, and both of them just burst into tears. I must have looked so bad, and I feel so guilty about it now, but obviously I didn't know how I looked, and so that just wasn't very nice at all. And so my body's kind of been through the mill a little bit, with miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies, and not a very nice pregnancy with Amelia, but she is completely healthy. She is, she's a picture of health. only ever had one day off school, and that was basically because she was sick. She'd caught a bug off someone and was sick, and when you have sickness and diarrhoea, they have to stay off school, and for so many, I think it's 72 hours, isn't it now? So, and that is the only time she's had off school. Luckily, that was a Friday, so by the Monday she was back at school. That brings me to more or less the current day. 3 years ago now, my periods got to such an extent, because obviously at that point I couldn't have any more children at all anyway. I'd had the rest of my reproductive system, well, I say the rest, my other tube and ovary taken, so there was absolutely no way we could naturally or otherwise really have children. And after all that happened, I did have a horrendous time with my periods once they came back. Doctors have tried me again. They try you on everything. I had Mirena coils. I was offered what they call abdominal ablation, which is where they more or less microwave your intestines. I'd read horrendous. I was actually going to go for that, but I'd read horrendous stories about after effects of that and how periods come back after a couple of years and you can be doubled up in agony. And I just thought, I am damn well not going through any of this anymore. I'm going to put my foot down. The only thing that is going to be certain of me not having to live with this anymore is a hysterectomy. And now things like this kind of do run in the family. My auntie had had a hysterectomy due to having endometriosis, which had been checked for. I didn't have that. I didn't have fibroids. I'd been checked for everything. I just basically had horrendous periods with humongous blood clots. Now, my auntie did have a bit of a carry on getting her operation, and in the end my uncle took, and again I'm really sorry if this is graphic, but he took a carrier bag full of blood clots and basically dumped it on the doctor's desk and said, look, now will you do something about it? Because she as well as me they'd tried everything on her, and nothing had worked. So knowing that, and being the sort of person I am, I basically saved up a few of deposits for the specialist and I took them in, and I said, right, I've come, because obviously I'd had the appointment about having the abdominal ablation, and I'd had a little think about it. I'd got very angry after I'd read up on it, thinking how dare they even send me for something like this if it has all these risks. And I'd gone back for the appointment basically just to say, what's going to be happening and things. I dumped the bag on his desk and I said, I've read up about abdominal ablation. I'm absolutely not interested in the slightest. I want a hysterectomy. And I was very firm, and he could obviously tell that I meant it. And he said, is this definitely what you want to do? And I said, yes, absolutely. And straight away he said, right, we'll send you. There is a private hospital in Hull. It's one of the Spires hospitals. I'll get you in as soon as possible. We'll get you in, we'll get you done. And literally within 2 months of that of me seeing my specialist, I was taken to Spires, and I was operated on. And he actually fixed something as well, because from the previous ectopic they had caught my, I think it's called urethra, and I'd been having trouble with my bladder. I'd not been able to feel when I was due to have a wee, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, I'm desperate, and sometimes have a little accident. But that was something that is a risk of having the operation done that you have done on an ectopic pregnancy. So I knew that was a risk, but I, just being quite cheeky, had said to my specialist, I'd mentioned it to him, and I said, is there any way? I said, I know obviously I'm not in to have this done, but would you mind having a little look while you're in that region and seeing if there is something wrong? Because obviously I'm having these feelings and I'm having like little accidents. So when I came round, I asked him, the first question I asked him actually, not even how the hysterectomy had gone, excuse me, I'd said, did you have a look and is there anything wrong? And he said, oh yes, you'd got some, I think he called them adhesions, so it's like scar tissue, I think. You had some adhesions in the area where you'd been operated on for your last ectopic pregnancy, and I think it had kind of glued a couple of bits together near my urethra. It was the urethra that was affected anyway, and all around the bladder area. So he had removed the adhesions. He said, I can't guarantee that the scar tissue won't come back. He said, but you should be okay for now. So I was super grateful. So I'd gone in, had a hysterectomy, and obviously had that little thing sorted out, which is a life-changing thing in itself, because you don't want to be wearing tenner ladies at only sort of 38, 39 years old, which I was then. So that's that. I have nothing within my tummy. It did feel a bit strange at first. I'm used to it now. It almost feels like all your organs have sort of spread out and they've got loads of room to knock about and kick about. But that again, as you know, it could have something to do with why my tummy is like it is. I've always suffered with like bloating and firmness and hardness in my tummy anyway. Obviously, anyone that's had a hysterectomy will know you're on bed rest more or less for 6 weeks. You're not even allowed to lift a kettle, so much as a kettle. It is a major operation, so you've got to take it very, very steady. Otherwise, you just set yourself back for months and months. And I have known people not take the doctor's instruction, and they have actually tried to do things too soon, and they're still paying the price years later. So I was adamant I was going to do as I was told. I had no excuse. Johnny's self-employed. He could take the time off. We wanted not to have the fact that I'd gone through all of this to get myself healthy to a point where I can be up and about and not worrying about periods. I wasn't going to jeopardise that for anything. So as things happen, you know, I was in bed for the 6 weeks, very rarely downstairs. If I was, I would be downstairs in the morning, downstairs for the whole day, and then back up again. We're lucky enough to have a toilet in a garage extension, so I wasn't having to climb up and down the stairs for the toilet. But inevitably, after the hysterectomy, I did pile the weight back on. So all my hard work was undone. I was so upset about it, to be honest, because I'd worked so hard to get where I thought I was going to stay for the rest of my life. But sometimes things just happen in life and you can't help it. If you sort of sit and dwell on it for years and years and years, it's an extra year, 2 or even 3 sometimes, that you're setting yourself back from getting where you want to be, because it does get harder with age. And that brings you absolutely bang up to date with my medical history. And I'm so sorry if a lot of it was quite gory. I've tried to simplify it as much as I can and not put the emotional content into it as much as I can. It's more, I wanted it more really to be factual, just so that if anyone's been through the same sort of things, and you again are the same as me and you're struggling with your weight, perhaps try not to be so hard on yourself. Our bodies, obviously, if you are the same as me, our bodies have taken quite a beating over the years. Us women, you know, we do have it sort of hard compared to men, don't we? So, you know, if anybody's watching, regardless of age, if you're really unhappy with your weight, do it now. You know, don't find an excuse. Don't say, oh, I'll start on Monday. Oh, I'll start in January. Oh, I'll wait until there's a discount voucher. You know, make the effort. Go in your wardrobe and sell some. You know, everybody can look around the houses and find something just to give you enough to get you started at Slimming World, or just on any healthy eating plan. Just, you know, think of the reasons that you're wanting to do it: for your family, for your health, you know, to be happier, to get out more, to gain confidence. I really don't think anybody has an excuse. I think you will only put an excuse on it in your own mind. If you really think hard and you want it enough, you will do it regardless. So that's my story. I've started all over again on the 20th of January 2014, and who knows how many years it'll take me to get back to where I was, that you saw me in those photos. But I'm in the mindset now of, even if it takes 10 years, I don't care. As long as the weight is going down, I'm feeling healthier with every pound I lose. That's all I can ask for. So I hope that video was of some help to you, and thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.